which was different from what I'm having. One of the names which I discovered later on was that I found it at the age of 9, that I was called Samuel. It was written in green, and I found it in a Bible, where they would be having the family tree. So the original one where it had been put first, they had put there Samuel, that was my name. And then I realized that after some time, it had been in green. Dad had cancelled out Samuel and put Harrison. And of course, my 2 other brothers begin with H. So I suspected by interpretation. I said, okay, my father, after some time, desired to have all the names beginning with H, and so they cancelled Samuel and put put Harrison. So I said, okay. And Mom has another name which she gave me, and she calls me Musabe, that I was prayed for from God. So that made me also think, okay, it could be that when they were having children, they got the first one, a girl. I said, okay, yeah, this happens. Second one, a girl. Said, oh, are we just going to be having girls? That's my interpretation. And then there was prayer, I suspect. Prayer. And then here came a boy. And because maybe Mom had asked so much about that, she named me Musabe, but Dad named me Harrison. Okay. So the first one was Samuel. So, okay, I saw, okay. Prayed for Samuel. There was a desire from my parents of me becoming like Samuel in the Bible. Samuel grew up in the temple, served in the temple, and led the children of Israel as a priest. As a priest and king, as a judge. And so I said, okay, that was at the age of 9. I said, when I grow up, I'll become a pastor. So I covenanted with God that when I grow up, I will become a pastor. When I became a teenage, as you know, the life of teenage, sometimes it has its ups and downs. I did not necessarily be all the time behaving according to my vision. Are we together? Yeah. But remember, at 9, I had already chosen that I will be a pastor. And so many times, because my father was a pastor, I would take some of his sermons and I go visit some of the village churches and then go there and preach. So when they would find that during the week, they would say, oh, your son came and he preached very well. That was how it was. And so somehow they were affirming me that I'm doing well. And so my interest was growing deeper. But during the teenage life, I was not necessarily walking like someone who's ready to be a pastor. And so by the time I finished my secondary school, wanting to go to Bugema, my father would say, no. You cannot go to Bugema. You cannot go to study. You don't fit being a pastor. You're going to spoil our what? Our profession. Take other lines except that. I said, no, I chose from childhood that I want to be a pastor. And so I could not be bought out of that. And my mom was saying, what do you want? I said, this is what I want. She said, okay. So with the acceptance of my parents, of course, with the blessing, then I went to Bugema to study. And though I may find ups and downs, you may find ups and downs in my ministry. You don't look like a pastor, you don't do this. But somehow, that covenant which I made with God, I would want to die as a pastor. And so I'm trying to say that I covenanted with God that I want to be a pastor, and it has shaped my identity. And so, at the outset, I would like to say that when we choose to align ourselves with God, God will do everything to see that we become what we have covenanted with Him, what we have vowed with Him. That was the same vow that the mother of Samuel had vowed, desiring his son to be. And by inculcating those values in Samuel, Samuel also vowed to remain like that, so that because of that vow, even when Samuel was in the tabernacle and the children of Eli were different, they were not walking according to the truth, but because of the values he had got from the mother of how a pastor should be, or a minister who is in the sanctuary should be, of how to serve God, of who God is, Samuel was not affected by the peer pressure of the children of Eli. Are we talking together? I'm saying that at the heart of your life, you must have a vow, because it is the vow which makes you. The vow gives you a compass which directs your life. Even though when I was a teen, I was a street boy and doing other things, but the background which I had, by the time I come from the Kamunguluze, I was facing what? Are we together? Yes, that's what I'm saying. And so I'm saying today that we are having the covenant of love with God. Let us begin with prayer. Lord, I thank you for choosing to talk to us today about our covenant. I pray that your Holy Spirit may come to speak to us, because I'm not fit and I have nothing, no words that can let it be known according to your design and desire. Please speak to each one of us according to our needs, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. When we look in the Bible, what is the covenant? In simple terms, the covenant in the Bible is an agreement, a vow. You see, today, when you are going to do anything, if you are going to a class, if you're going everywhere, there is an agreement that you have to sign. We are going to do for you this as a school or as a company or as this, and you are expected to do this and this and this. Are you agreed? Yes. Then you do, that's it. They call it a what? A contract. Sometimes an agreement. And sometimes it is a vow. Now, that is a binding agreement. A covenant is a binding agreement between God and his people. Now, I would like to say on the other hand, that the greatest part of the center of the covenant is God. God made an agreement with himself. Are you getting this? He made an agreement with himself to love us and give us everything that he has given, even before we were made. That's why Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, it says that the Lamb who was killed from the foundation of the world, before even we were made, before the world was founded, God saw what will happen in our lives, and he says, I have vowed that I will love them irrespective of what goes on in their lives, and I'll woo them to being my children. Are we together? That is extremely important. Now, the covenant, after that, when we were born, when we were made, therefore I can say that even though we don't find the word covenant in the life of Adam, I believe that when you look around his life, you can sense the element of a covenant. Why? The covenant with Adam is considered as the creation covenant. If you read in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 to 17, when God put that tree in the garden, God gives his commitment. You see, in the covenant, there is a commitment from bodies. A covenant, there is a commitment from two parties, because the covenant cannot be between only one person, but two parties. And God has committed himself in this covenant to provide for Adam and give him dominion over everything. So what is expected of man? To be responsible to God in fulfilling what God has designed him to be. So our being design and whatever God has put in us, whatever he designed around us, in fulfilling our responsibility, in becoming what God wants us to be. Are we together? So that I will call it the creation covenant. You were made for a reason, and that reason should form your identity. That reason forms the reason for your being. You know the reason for your being. The reason for your being has also love in it. God loved you so much that those reasons for my being, he put them all in who he made us. You know how special you are unless you know who you are, what you have, and what God has given you. You can never fulfill your covenant. So our first step is to know, who am I? Then why am I here? And in Genesis we see that God answers all that. Now, when you put the word commitment, right? You can't hear me. Can we put it? Adam's failure to uphold the covenant Because at the covenant, there is what God has committed himself to do, and there is what we are expected to do. What is at the center of it? There is commitment. Commitment is expected from each of us. God has committed himself to do for us what he has planned. And he wants us to be committed to him in being partners. That is extremely important. And because of that, there comes a test towards that commitment. To God, there was a test to the commitment when he saw in future that we would sin. That was a test to his love. Can he continue loving us when we have sinned? And that's why Romans chapter 5 verse 8, he says, okwagala kwa Katonda kulabisibwa gye tuli, that when we were still sinners, God loved us. Now, to us, where the test is, we have seen with Adam. The test is an opportunity that when we stand our ground and don't give in, it becomes a stepping stone that brings us to grow in fulfilling, in achieving, and in accessing more of what God has planned, and we are able to use it rightly. Are we together? Yeah. A test allows us to go to the next level in accessing the many things that God has given us, that we are able to get them and use them. And so that is very important. That is why many times when God opens to us the opportunities for us to be responsible in responding to him and what he desires to do, his message, his mission, and anything that he wants to do, there comes a test, because the test is costly. What does it cost for me to be able to do that? And that time of test is where we are going to see, are we going to remain committed to God, or we are going to choose our own thing? And this is why Satan knew that, and that's where he comes. How are you going to stand around the commitment? Now, you'll realize that around Adam, you see the covenant, there are many things within the covenant. Marriage is also a covenant, isn't it? Marriage is a great covenant where, for God to let us know the relationship of the covenant, he brings things around us that should teach us and train us to develop the values of what he has as God, and he's implementing and is testing to us, and he brings it to us so as to test our commitment and that we can grow in that commitment. So in marriage, marriage becomes the first symbol in which God brings the idea of the covenant, commitment, test, and yet these people are supposed to still remain united and just not wavering, moving away from home. And our test with God, we are remaining united and not moving away from God. But in Adam's marriage, when the test came, how did he respond in marriage? How did he? Adam failed, because when sin came with Eve first, Adam forgot his commitment to God. Adam forgot his trust in God, and he could not let go. Eve was so beautiful in his mind that he could not see God being able to do something very different. And he says, I'd rather eat with her and do what? And die. Now the question is, does love as commitment make us suicidal? Are we together? Does love as commitment make us suicidal about the non-negotiables? Muntegedde? Temuntegedde? Olw'okuba nti njogedde nti okwagala olw'endagaano, olw'obweyamo, olw'okulagaano kwaliwo ndeese amaka nga kyekifo omulabisibwa endagaano ya Katonda ng'erabisibwa mu bikolwa ebiri mu maka nga bitestinga nga bizimba okulagaana. Mumanyi olunaku recently abatukolerako bano be banno ba Hamza muga nti mu bulwadde ne muki mu bunafu ne mu bukozi, si kyekyo, mu bugaga ne muki ne mu bwavu, tujja kusigala nga tuli tutya bumu. Ekyo ye commitment gye tukoze, test n'eryoka ejja. Ani mumwe omunafu? Mukumu ababiri. Tomanya ogera kola. I never, this was not what I was vowing to. Si kyekyo. Nga tuli twakyogera nti in this I will be. Kati test nejja. Do we remain committed to that? Otyo kati we nazijjidde awali Adam mukyala we ayonoonye, agenda okumulaba nti unayonoonye, agenda kufa. Obulungi buno naabuleka kandye tukole tutya tufe wamu. Awembuliza ekibuuzo, okwagala kugwana okubeera suicidal? Wanji? Tamu jijera ndikoze okubeera suicidal. Suicidal kwe kubeera nti, when I ask, is love suicide, committing suicide? Must love lead us to commit suicide? Love is suicidal. When we are following Jesus, our love to Jesus is suicidal. What does that mean? I see death, but because Jesus has said, move on, I go plunge in that death because he's saying, go on. He has not yet said, stop, don't go, I just go. And in our covenant, mu bulamu bwa Abraham gwe tulina wano, Abraham weighs the odds in Genesis chapter 22. God has told him, go kill him, sacrifice him, the only hope that he had. And he nurtured this boy up to the time when he should be having fruits. God tells him, go and sacrifice him. That is suicidal, isn't it? He goes and is ready to plunge the knife into him, and God says, no, don't do it. That is suicidal. Now we come back to Adam. Adam, if someone has come and made Eve sin, God has already said something, and now he chooses. Who of the two are you going to choose? Are you going to go to lose Eve and remain with God? Or you're going to lose God and choose Eve? By losing God, you are dying. That is suicide. And that's a suicide that has no end to it. There's no coming back out of that. But when it's around God, God is the author of life. And so there is something different to that. So that's where the question is. And I'm leaving that now to you, something for you to think about. But I'm just saying that the covenant requires commitment. And that commitment requires that even though there is death, there is impossible, there is what, but the commitment which you have been called to, that you remain into it. While it appears to be suicidal, are we together now? There are times when in your family, in your marriage as a couple, then it will appear to be suicidal to remain. But God has said marriage is permanent. And because of that, many times it will appear suicidal. Are we together? The only way that we shall overcome this is the presence of God. The presence of God removes suicide because it brings life. And life comes after death. Are we together? Yeah. No seed can germinate and grow unless it has died. So marriage becomes a place where self dies, weaknesses die, everything begins to die in order for me to mature, in order for me to grow, in order for me to reach the status for which God has called me to be. Are we seeing that? And so this is what we see in the covenant. Now, this covenant, you find it also around Noah. When God has called Noah, the covenant with Noah, he says, I'm going to destroy the whole world. But my commitment is to you. And then after redeeming Noah in the ark, then he says, I will never destroy this world with the flood. But you see, what he tells Noah to do, build an ark. Are we together? He has built the ark, but remember, when they are in the ark with animals and the flood is raging, were the efforts of Noah and his sons and family enough to have kept this boat, this ark, just rocking? The winds are rocking and everything is. Was it the efforts of Noah's that had kept it? No. When we remain in the covenant commitment, we leave the rest to God. However much the storms will come, but because we have remained faithful to the commitment, God takes over. It's only when we move out of that, and then God is out of it, that our effort remains like rags. And the wind that came would have, it is said in Ellen White writings that Satan would have been destroyed in that flood. He would have been, no life could live outside the ark that would be there. And it's by the grace of God that still held the ark to see that it doesn't go into pieces, and it was able to hold that life. So the commitment is what gives us the opportunity to be able to move beyond the tests. Noah was tested, he kept doing his work. 120 years, he kept doing his work. Faithfulness to the covenant is the only way by which we can move. Are we together? Yeah. And Abraham, it was the same with the covenant with Abraham. It says, leave your own people, leave everyone and go. And Abraham, he leaves. But we have already talked around his test. God told him the responsibility to Abraham, walk before me blamelessly and live. Walk before me what? Blamelessly. Blamelessly is when you're sticking to the covenant, to what God is saying, that there's no any blame around it. He says, and live. And he said that through you, I'm going to bless you, and through you, I will bless the whole world. The covenant of God with you, as it was with Adam, when he blessed him, the whole world, everything that was around Adam was going to be good. And he talks to Abraham. Because of Abraham, God is going to reach out to the rest of the world and bless them. If I bring it to us, God would like to bless your family, would like to bless your place of work. God would like to bless you everywhere where you are through you. Are you able to remain committed to the agreement God has made with you? We call ourselves his children. Are we committed to what he has told us to do? Or we have seen the responsibility and what is involved and we have backed away? And I'm saying that backing away, we cheat ourselves. By backing away, we cheat ourselves because we cannot grow, we cannot get the experience, and so we get the crumbs of life. Are we together? Getting the crumbs? You are at the table, and you leave the table to go and eat the crumbs. Are you getting this picture? God has given you everything, and you move away from there. You go down. The food which has grown down is what you are picking. It's what you are picking. Why? You have moved away from what would make you eat everything that God has planned for you. And this is the challenge that we have. So with Abraham, when it came to marriage, God tests him. You see, everywhere we have a test. And with Abraham, the wife was not having a child, and all that time, you can see the test which is there. Abraham is convinced by his wife, let us do it our way. And what comes out of it? Problems up to today that comes out of that. Every time we move away from our faithfulness, being committed to the covenant, we find ourselves that we bring more trouble around us. And my prayer is, we need, you see, faith is being, today I've used the word suicide. Forgive me to say that faith is around that you are ready to die. You go into it, other people are saying, you're dying, you're going to die. This is like this. But you say, no, 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 my God has said, my God. And they say, oh, you are standing around death. Say, my God has said. And then because God has said, we are never destroyed. Abraham chose to go to Hagar and got everything that he got was not good until he got Isaac. And God was able to be with him. Now, these are people around the covenant. Then we have Jacob, because after Abraham, we have Jacob, who is around the covenant. You realize that Jacob, and then we have David. I would like to end around David. When we look at these covenants, we see that there are some people who are around there because of their commitment, following what they have been taught by their parents. There is a destiny that follows out of that. Let's look at Abel. Abel, we don't find him being talked about in the covenant, but he was obedient to what the parents were teaching him and what God required. And then we find his offering is what? Accepted. The one of Cain who is a rebel is rejected. And then when you come around Abraham and around Isaac, we find that Esau and Jacob, one of them is what? Accepted. Another one is rejected. But you see that this acceptance and rejection is around the covenant fulfillment. Abel was obedient, and so he gets everything. Even though he dies, Hebrews tells us that his voice still lives. And Cain chose his own way, and his way was not very good. Esau did not get the same way. And so this is what we find around the covenant. And when we find, when you look at these lives, it is very able, though is not directly part of the covenant, his offering represents faith, obedience, elements of the central covenant. His sacrifice was accepted by God. When it comes to Jacob, Jacob's connection is a reaffirmation of God. Jacob was a cheater, isn't it? He cheated his brother to get the blessing. He cheated his way to impersonate as if he's Esau until he was blessed. And we find God also paying him back in his life. But Jacob was, in the end, he was faithful to the covenant. I want to, just because that's our text was around Jacob, so because of time, I'm trying to leave some other parts. Jacob, when he has been blessed by God, he's connected to the covenant. The blessing was a way by which the parent passed on the covenantal promises to the one who has been blessed. Are we together? By the father putting his hands and blessing the child, he was connecting the promises, the blessings, everything that God has said to be passed over to the one who has been. And that is why we find that the requirements for that, it was supposed to be that the parent has seen that this child is fitting in the walking to the covenant agreement as it had been promised. Are we together? However, Isaac did not follow that. Isaac followed his whims, his taste. And God, in his mercy, did not allow that. Yes. God, in his mercy, did not allow Isaac, the wayward, to receive the blessings and take the whole family away from God. So, whatever way you may say, Jacob comes in. We see mistakes around that. When Jacob is running away from home, he's seeing that he's gone. He's seeing that he's not fit. He's seeing the consequences of cheating because Esau has vowed that he will kill him. And as he's running, then that's where our text was today. At night, after he's very tired and he gets a stone and sleeps, God comes and speaks to him in the words which we read today, isn't it? You go and read Genesis chapter 28 from verse 15 there to 22. God comes to him in a dream and I say, I have blessed you. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be. Can you see that those blessings, compare them to Genesis chapter 15, when God was making a covenant with Abraham? Are we together? God told him, come, gather animals, go and split them into two, and I will come and we make covenant. Who is God to come and sit with mere human Adam to make a covenant as if they're equal? Abraham is busy the whole day chasing away the animals, which are coming to eat on the offering until he gets tired. And then in that sleep, as he was in sleep, God comes and he passes through the fire. And then from there, God speaks to him and promises him all these very things. Do you see a relationship between Abraham and Jacob in God passing on the covenant? Are you seeing that relationship, the similarity? And so this, I find it very interesting when God does it. But by doing that, God is forgiving the bad past. Are we together? So your past must never stand in your way towards the promises that God has used to take you. God knows, he has been seeing how wayward, how not fit you may be, but God is continually leading you. And so Jacob is taken in that way. But after God has told him this, and then he affirms to him, he sees a ladder going up to heaven. Angels are coming down and angels are going up. How is that if we connect it to Genesis chapter 12, verse 3? I'm going to bless you and make a blessing. I'm going to bless you and bless the world through you. In Jacob here is saying that through him, he is where the gate of heaven, angels are going to heaven and are coming, and the blessings are going to go everywhere from that. Are you seeing a similarity there? But here is in a picture. And so we see the blessings of God are going to be. And how does Jacob respond? This is where the crux of this message today is. When he wakes up, he says, I think this is where the gate of heaven is. And then he promises, Lord, if you give me food, if you give me breath, if you give me, I am going to make sure that I do what? I give you a tithe. Yeah. He says, this is what I'm going to do. After receiving the covenant, there is a response to the covenant. That response is a commitment. And he says, I'm going to give you. Now, the test. When Jacob is there, Laban is cheating him. Everywhere he's being cheated. 7 years, work for the wife. 7 years changing the sheep. Now they are speckled. Now they are not. He's being cheated. He's being cheated. Those are tests. But how does Jacob respond? He's with prayer. He's with prayer. With every cheating, Jacob remains faithful. God blesses him. Are you seeing that? God is continually blessing him irrespective of the tests that he's having. So, irrespective of all those tests, what he has promised continues to be. What am I suggesting? Many of us today are finding ourselves not being faithful to God, are the vows that we make around God, every promise that we take about around God. When things become tough around us, we leave our commitment, we leave our faithfulness to the covenant, and believe that by doing like that, we shall amass and we shall prosper. Are we together? But we fail to understand that the one with whom we have made the vow, he has promised to keep us, protect us, irrespective of everything around us. In Psalms 23, when he says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And he says, he makes me eat in the presence of my enemies. Enemies will be there, but you're feasting. And they're looking at you and gnashing their teeth. They want to do you bad, but they cannot. Why? The Lord is protecting you. And so we move away from the commitment of that. And that's why, I don't know, God would want to bless us. Until the end, we find Jacob is fighting, until when he's going, God comes now to meet him. He's taking things back. Rachel realizes, no, in this family, Jacob is supposed to be the next of kin. How does she do it, Rachel? Abachi, Bakatonda, Laban. That was a sign to show the one who owns the gods is the next of kin. So Rachel is seeing that Jacob is supposed to be the next of kin. And so she takes that. So we see Jacob is continually, and after that, Laban wants to come and take everything, but he doesn't mind. He doesn't succeed. And after that, he's going to meet his brother. He knows now my time of death. Who fights for him? God. How does God remain? Remember, Jacob is also a fighter. He's well trained. He has been taking care of the thing. But how does God prepare Jacob? When he's moving at night, he has already put these flocks to go, these and the wives and where to go. As he's moving, then an angel comes and fights him. And what does he leave? The leg is socketed and he's only now limping. He's going to meet his brother while limping. That disguise was a blessing. Esau, who comes ready to pounce on him, he finds someone at Tesowola. How can you kill someone who is like that? And he looks at him. God has already done it. There's no coincidence around this. It is God planned. So that sometimes when we think that we are in our weakness, God has made that weakness strength. However, now, in most cases, we don't want to appear to be weak. And we move away from. Now, I'm tempted to go on. I would want to end here. I would want to end because I really wanted to say that there is a need for us to live a life of being in a covenant. All these people succeed because in everything they had covenanted with God and kept that covenant. Do you realize that when you are in communion with God, having that covenant with God, having those strict rules of you, having habits, and making sure that God, you're having a pure relationship, Satan sends his armies He wants to make sure that he wins you. But when he finds that you're having that strong covenant, Satan cannot be able to get you. Are we together? It's a life of the covenant that will lead us to succeed in this world, will lead us to succeed where we are. The enemy would want to destroy us, but the covenant surrounds us. The power of that commitment which God has will surround us. Now, because today we are talking about building the church, and we have agreed that every end of the month we are coming to do this. That's an agreement. Today, I am pushing for a longer agreement, because when it came to Jacob, after saying that this is the house of the Lord, and I will come back here, that became Bethel. Jacob went back there because he made the Lord. I haven't gone to David. David also, he loved the Lord. He grew up in the Lord. When it came to he said, no, what is the best thing that I can do? I'm living in a palace like this, but my Lord has no house. God told him, no, your hands are full of what? Blood. You will not do it. It's your son. But what did David do? He prepared and had gold, had everything to prepare for the temple, and his son did it. He was still faithful to the covenant. I am proposing today, and I'm calling upon you today, that you take a covenant with God. You take a covenant. It may be costly. I've talked of the cost of the covenant, cost of having the covenant. But I'm telling you that please take a covenant with God. We are coming every time and putting in something. Yes, we can accept that that's what we are doing. But is it really the only thing that you can give God? Question number 2. Is it the best that you can give God? You see, when David is saying, I need to build the temple for the Lord, he says, everything that is around God is not the best. I must give God the best and build him that temple, which is better than my palace. My palace cannot be better than the temple. And so he wants to do it. That, as he has done it, he does it around God. Are you going to take a step? Do you know your Lord? How big he is, how rich he is, how gracious he has been. He has kept you. He has done everything. How are you going? Because in my year, those people who I grew up with, they are no longer there. I used to be doing some sports. And those sports, those who misused them, some of them, I have found them. Some of them, the eyes are no longer there. Some of them, the legs have been affected. Some things have happened around them. Those whom I studied with, I have found some of them have not reached somewhere. So when you look at yourself in many ways, and you are there where you are, is it because you're good, or because God is having any commitment? So what you're doing, is it the best for God? Is that the best? Nothing but the best. You see, worship is not something that is second class. No. Worship is your best. And your best, according to God, is when you have no more. You have given and no more. when my pastor who counseled me towards when you are going to get married, I think it was at Najana Nkumbi when he was giving, said, Harrison, love your wife, give her until you have nothing to give. Give until you have nothing to give. That's how you know that you have given what? Your best. How do you know? Nothing more you can give. And when you have reached at nothing, and that's when God, that's where God is. I'm asking Luganda, our deacon, I'm requesting them, please, to give you forms. I did that. Musonyiwe okuba nti forms teziri mu Luganda. Naye munazitegeera. I am requesting that have a covenant, have a vow, have some agreement with God. Jacob said, as long as God gives me food and this, I am going to do this. When he was saying that, it was not because he saw what he was having. He made a vow out of faith. And his faith determined the kind of vow that he gave. I'm not talking of tithe. I'm talking about what can you do for God to be able to have his own presence where they are not sending us away. And in that commitment which is being taken around, I did propose that if you look, it is broken down. It's like brick by brick. You look. Yeah, there is one who was praying. He said there are some people in the hospitals who are on oxygen, and oxygen is being bought costly, isn't it? When you see the air we use, how much do we pay for it? The food we eat, how much? And God is giving us, he's very faithful to his commitment to us. He's giving us all this. How much do we give? When it comes to time, we want to say, what are we going to do? You say, I don't have time. God and time. Is it your time or his time? So in that form which is being passed around, I have put it at a very basic thing. I am requesting, but you can choose your own. I say, do we want to go to 0 months? If you want, 0 months to around 12, so that we begin 13. I say, if you say, every day God is giving me life, I will give him, on every day, I'm going to give him a 50p. Are you seeing that? I'm going to give him, 50 pence per day for the entire 365 days. If that baby or toddler does, now my young people, those are now you can challenge and say, how does Abel give a 50p per day and I give a 50p? Or could it challenge? I can't do it. I'm going to make it a 70p per day for 365 days. And I've said here, if we pledge our children from 1 to 12 years a pledge of 50p per day, for the entire year, that child will have given how much? 182 for the year. And for teenagers, from 13 to 19, if you pledge that God has put me around a lot of things, I'm pledging £1 per day for the entire year. How much would it be? 365. Yeah, I shouldn't have put the full amount, because then you'll see, oh, this is too much. But this is possible. You know why I said? Your faith in God should dictate your vow. Are we together? Your faith, obwesigewo mu Katonda bugwana bukuyambe okusalawo. Do you believe that in God's store ofunayo kitono oba ofunayo kinene? Do you believe nti ekyo kyokka kyofuna kyekisoboka kyokka oba Katonda alina obusobozi? When you read about the coming of the Holy Spirit, atutegeeza nti Omwoyo Mutukuvu bw'ajja ajja kutuwa ebirabo okusinziira ku busobozi bwaffe. Tuli bumu? Bwe tusoma ku talanta, Matayo 24, wayogerera ku bantu bwe yabalekera talanta. When God left them with talents, he gave them talents according to their what? Ability. Kati ekibuuzo kiri nti, ky'osalawo okuwa kiraga nti kino kye nsobola, kiraga nti eno ye ceiling ya ability yange gye ntaddewo. Tuli bumu? Yensonga lwaki nkuteereddewo ne ngamba nti oyinza obutasalawo kino nga bwe mpropose nze, naye ne weesalirawo. Naye okusalawo okwo kunaaba nga kusinziira ku kukkiriza kwo mu Katonda n'obusobozi bwe. N'omwekyo eri teens ne nteekawo nti singa wa £1 kitegeeza nti omwaka gwonna ziri 365. eri abakulu waliwo 3 options ekyo nkitadde mu weeks pledge 5 per week kiri walako ekyo no kubanga week 52 zibeera meka 260 ezo zosobola naye ng'ate wogenda okugula mu kiseera kino ng'ogenda okugula emmere trolley tesobola toyinza gijjuliza ku sente ezo trolley just okugamba tuteke emmere gy'otwala eka buntu butono nnyo pound 45 simanyi wogenda nze ffe tugulira Aldi naye sente ziri waggulu n'olwekyo zogamba ezo nti zisoboka options zino we ziri mid-level commitment pledge 10 per week example yeyo zijja kubeera 520 omwaka oba generous commitment 20 per week the whole year zijja kuba nga ziri 1040 choose what kind of vow you're going to say nga gundi bwe yayogera what vow are you going to take please bino mubikola ne Katonda saagala mugende n'empapula ezo njagala bwe mwanga mugenda muzirekere wali muziwe abadinkoni oba si kyekyo you can give them here and you don't need to wait until December buli kiseera kyonna lw'oba ng'ozze osobola okujja n'ogamba nti kano nkateeka ku gundi yange kano nkateekayo tubadde tugendera ku birthdays naye nyongerako ne mbasaba make a vow and walk with God as long as God gives me life let me try to do this may God help us Mukama atuyambe nti okulagaana kwaffe ne Kristo kintu kikulu nnyo nkitadde mu mikono gyammwe Mukama abawa omukisa nga musalawo abalaba amanyi by'asobola okubawa okukkiriza kwammwe kakubawe eriiso mutunule mu busobozi bwe musalewo nga bwe mwagala Mukama